Good afternoon, Evergreen. I hope you guys are all doing well on this gray Sunday. Looks like it wants to rain, but I don't think it's gonna. Today we're going to read Chapter 7 of Fang Spew and Black Pond. Now, if you remember Chapter 6, actually, if you missed me reading Chapter 6, you probably need to go back and listen to it, because Chapter 6 is Part 1, Chapter 7 is Part 2. And this Part 2, Chapter 7, will cover a little bit sort of to bring you up to speed, but not as much as reading the whole story. So here we go, Chapter 7. Blur Sneak and Water Spears, Part 2. Okay, as you guys remember, we were talking last about blur sneaks. We talked about what they can do and what they can't do, how they hide and how they kill frogs, which is rather gruesome because they suck all the moisture out of the frog and leave the little frog grape looking like a little frog raisin. Remember, they found a blur sneak sneaking on the path just north of where all the frogs normally hang out, and that was shortly after the wedding. And they all hopped in the water because blur sneak can't handle water. That's why they're moisture suckers, because they can't get water out of rivers, lakes, and streams like we humans can and regular frogs and geckos can. So they all hopped into the water, and the blur sneak, as best as they could tell, once again disguised himself as dead leaves. He can disguise himself as green live leaves too, depending on the time of year. That way he matches the surroundings with the environment. He then blew on past, at least that's what it looked like, and the frogs began to come back out of the water and had a good talk. Now, most of the frogs had heard of blur sneaks before, but none had seen one. Fang Spew was one of the few frogs who had heard of them and also thought about what he'd heard. He considered what a blur sneak must look like and realized that if it's windy, it would be very hard to tell if a blur sneak is around. Conversely, if there was no wind, it would be easy to tell. He had thought enough about it that he was able to recognize a blur sneak when he saw one. So they all got out of the water, all started talking at once, and the common theme was, "What are we going to do?" Bubbles Lime and Fang Spew, who were becoming leaders of the large frog population, discussed that they could just live in the water, and as long as they stay in the water, or maybe within a foot of the shoreline, no big deal. Blur Sneak can't get to them. And you know what? The truth is that frogs normally live in the water about a foot away from it. They don't often go hopping all over, at least not this kind of frog. Maybe that would be a good plan to avoid getting killed by a blur sneak. After Fang Spew and Bubbles Lime talked it over, they quickly hopped up the path to discuss with T-Moss. T-Moss listened carefully, saving his questions until the entire story had been told. After some discussion, T-Moss agreed with the plan, seeing no holes in it. So Fang Spew and Bubbles Lime quickly returned to the pond and passed the word to the frog ranks. "Hey everybody, stay in the pond. Maybe the blur sneak, having no hunting around here, will go someplace else. If you do have to get out of the pond, stay within a foot of it. That way you can sleep in the grass and mud like we normally do, but still be close enough to get into the water to be safe." Surprisingly enough, with such a large population of frogs, that worked. Folks spent more time in the water and there was no wandering off. It worked for a week. Matter of fact, it was on the 8th day that a teenage girl frog went missing. She left in the evening and was not back when the sun rose the next morning. The parents were distraught. Fang Spew did some investigating. Why had she left? Turns out she'd been dared. "I bet you're too scared to go more than a foot away from the pond. I bet you won't go 3 feet. I dare you." After her and her teenage friends joked back and forth, she took the dare and went more than 10 feet away, back into the brush. The frogs organized 2 search parties, and taking Fang Spew's advice, they only searched on no-wind days. 2 days later, they found her desiccated little body lying off to one side of a path. Blur Sneak had nailed her. And the frogs collectively realized something important. You can't run and hide your whole life. Eventually, you've got to do something. In their current situation, the frogs were stuck. Excuse me. Yeah, you're a good girl. In the current situation, the frogs were stuck, lost my place, to the water and a very small strip of land around it. Trapped almost. And their inconvenient living arrangements had turned out to be a very big deal for Fang Spew. He used to visit T-Moss on a daily basis, hopping down the path to T-Moss's tree. But he couldn't do that anymore. Obviously, that was more than a foot away from the pond and therefore very dangerous. The day the girl's body was found, T-Moss fortunately came by for a visit. He, Bubbles Lime, and Fang Spew put their heads together and brainstormed. What idea could they come up with to get rid of this stupid blur sneak? After 15 minutes of discussion, they realized several things. Whatever they did, it wouldn't be the frogs doing it. The frogs couldn't carry something, rock, stick, water, whatever, when they hop. Just can't do it. They needed all their limbs for hopping and balance. So it be up to Timos to carry whatever they came up with to fight the Blurshnik. With his 4 legs, he could carry and walk, much like a human. And it looked like it would be up to Timos to use the weapon, too. But what would the weapon be? Timos couldn't be expected to carry a handful of water, which they all considered their best weapon, as it would spill out of their hands before he got a foot away from the pond. So then it came to the question of what could he carry the water in? And Bubbles' line came up with the best answer. You know, we played mud balls a lot. Both Fangspew and Timos nodded. We take hollow reeds from the pond, we put a bit of mud in one end, and then whoop, we blow mud and mud balls at each other. What if we put mud at the bottom end, filled up the reed with water, then capped it off with another chunk of mud? Then we throw the entire thing at the Blurshnik. It'd be kind of like and Timos interjected her here, a water spear. We'll throw it like a spear, but it has water inside of it. The mud on both ends will keep the water in the reed until it hits the Blurshnik. They all thought it was a good idea. Bubbles especially, since it was hers. Fangspew was impressed with both the idea and the word water spear. He thought it sounded cool. Fangspew took charge. All right, this sounds workable. I think we should take several of the water spears and position them along the path that runs north from here up to Timos' home. That way, they'll be nearby when we need them, and we won't have to carry them all the time. We can make a bunch of them and put them in close intervals along the path. When we walk up there, if the Blurshnik shows up, Timos could simply grab one and throw it. The 3 of them sat silently, digesting the plan. They all were well aware that Timos couldn't be with them all the time, and they didn't have a plan for that. And no one said anything about what would happen if Timos missed. Phase 1. It took them 3 days to get the water spears ready. First, they picked the reeds from the west side of the pond. Then they put thick mud in the bottom, let it dry, and filled the tube with water. Then they capped off the top and gave them to Timos to carry up the path. Remember, frogs can't carry a spear and hop. Fangspew tried and ended up wet and muddy. And Timos and Bubbles enjoyed that show. Fangspew thought of making a carrying harness, but that would have required too much time and effort more wisely put to making water spears. So, after 3 days and multiple trips for Timos, the path was lined with water spears, located about every 6 to 10 inches along the right side. Phase 2 began when Fangspew resumed his old habit of hopping up the path to visit Timos. The modification of his habit was that Timos was always with him on those trips. Timos would get up in the morning, hike down Black Pond, then he and Fangspew would hop back up to his house. They both enjoyed this friendship time together enormously. They'd talk about nothing and everything, tell jokes and laugh, and enjoy the relative solitude, especially for Fangspew, who was normally surrounded by hundreds of frogs. Bubbles came along frequently on their trips up and down the path. Fangspew was okay with that as long as Timos was with them. They did get a scare on the 5th day. 3 of them were hiking up the path toward Timos' house just to get away from the crowd. The frogs were especially boisterous that day, and Fangspew and Bubbles wanted some peace and quiet. They were halfway to Timos' house when they saw some leaves blow across the path. Timos, always a quick gecko, sprinted over to the nearest water spear, hoisted it over his head, and hurled it dead on toward the leaves. Now let's be clear about something. Geckos can throw very accurately, but they cannot throw far. So he had to be close. In this event, he grabbed the water spear and flung it at the center of the blowing leaves, which was almost on top of them when he threw it. The throw was perfect. The water spear flew straight between the 2 center leaves and kept going. Timos grabbed another, stood on his back legs, flung the second one. Another great throw, another throw right through the center of the leaves, and kept going. Caught up in the excitement, Timos reached for yet another when Fangspew hollered, "Stop! Whoa, Timos, stop! Those are just leaves. Stop wasting the water spears." Timos, whose heart was going thump, thump, thump at a frantic rate, about as fast as a gecko heart can go, stopped, looked around at the harmless leaves, and smiled sheepishly at the 2 frogs. Bubbles tried not to laugh as the tension ebbed, but Fangspew made no attempt to remain straight-faced. He threw his head back and laughed. "You sure killed those leaves. They won't bother anyone else. They'll leave us alone from now on." After a pause, Timos and Bubbles joined in the laughter. Still chuckling, they resumed their hike. False alarm. Another week passed. About every other day, the friends would hike to the path and check on the status of the water spears. Fangspew was concerned that the reeds might start to leak and would be empty when needed. He checked them religiously. It wasn't until Thursday, I believe it was, that they had an encounter with the Blurshnik. It was just Fangspew and Timos, and they were bouncing and hiking and walking up the path toward Timos' home, when about 5 feet away, they saw some leaves blow across the path. Again, T-Moss was quick. He knew it was his job to save his friend's life. Remember, frogs can't throw, so Gecko had to. Additionally, blur-sneaks don't hunt geckos due to the gecko's bitter skin. They hunt frogs. So it's all up to T-Moss to save Fangspew's life. Quick as you can blink, T-Moss turned to Fangspew. Run! Fangspew paused. Leave T-Moss here by himself? T-Moss, again, louder. Run! Now, go! And Fangspew spun on his heels and began hopping back toward Black Pond. Seeing Fangspew leap away, T-Moss moved quickly to the side of the path, grabbed a water spear, resupplied after the false alarm, and threw it at the blur-sneak. The distance was too far, and the water spear hit the ground at about 3 feet from T-Moss. Now, 3 feet does not sound far to a human, but think, if he stood only 2 inches tall above the ground, then 3 feet is a long way. A 3-foot throw is pretty impressive when you can barely see over the blade of grass. So T-Moss grabbed another water spear and waited for the blur-sneak to come closer. Arm cocked back, balancing on his hind legs. But the blur-sneak did not close the distance immediately. Rather, it moved across the path, paused in the middle, then reversed course. When it got to the edge of the path, it began to move toward the gecko, who was still up on his hind legs, water spear ready. And still T-Moss waited. You remember the famous quote from Revolutionary Battle at Bunker Hill? Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes? That's what T-Moss was doing. He waited until blur-sneak was 3 feet away, then using his whole body like a baseball pitcher, hurled the water spear. It was a great throw, and like the false alarm for last week, the water spear went between the leaves in front of the blur-sneak, and looked like it was going to miss when the spear split open, water running down. What? Since the blur-sneak was so well camouflaged, almost invisible, T-Moss had never seen the body of one. Everyone sees the leaves, a distracting part of the camouflage, but the actual body is rarely observed. T-Moss thought he'd missed when the water spear burst on what it looked like, well, nothing. To this day, if you ask T-Moss, he will not be able to tell you what he saw. Leaves? Yes, he'll tell you. We've all seen those. But the water spear burst open on maybe a face? I don't know. I saw an eye, just one, and the leaves passed in front and I lost it. But for a second, the water outlined something, and I still wake up at night seeing that single eye. When the water spear hit the blur-sneak, the animal let out a noise that reminded T-Moss of a frog clearing his throat. That's the best description he could come up with. Higher pitched, perhaps, than a frog, but it certainly was an unhappy noise. And then the leaves blew back, up the path, and away from T-Moss, finally disappearing off to the left. It was gone. T-Moss waited a minute to ensure Fangspew's departure, then turned and hollered, Fangspew, Fangspew, come back, it's gone. Fangspew, who was almost at the pond at this point, he had really hustled back, turned around and hopped back up the path, moving a bit slower, you can believe it. He was a bit tired, and the adrenaline let down caused him to take his time. Also, he used the height of his jump to look as far as possible to ensure blur-sneak wasn't coming back. Arriving at T-Moss's side, Fangspew said, looks clear. You must have been successful. What happened? T-Moss told the story, and Fangspew said, phew, that's impressive. How did you manage to wait so long? If it had been me, I'd thrown all the water spears when the blur-sneak was still 5 feet away. Don't think I could have helped it. Good job. T-Moss took the compliment graciously, smiled and said, it worked. Come on, let's go make some more water spears and restock this area. The two friends amicably headed south to tell the story to the other frogs and make water spears. They revisited the entire episode, analyzed it to learn from it, and improve their tactics. The longer they talked of it, and Bubbles Lime wanted to hear all the details, the more sober they became. For although they had driven away the blur-sneak, it was still around. The feeling had been growing among the frogs that perhaps blur-sneak had left. After all, it had been over a week since the teenager had died. But Fangspew's news, while exciting, was disappointing overall. The blur-sneak was still around, and probably hungry. Well, maybe not. Another week passed with no sightings. Frogs, who eat several times a day, couldn't figure it out. Where was the blur-sneak getting its food? Did it only eat once a week? Was it gone? Maybe it moved on to another pond somewhere. But the blur-sneak had not left. After a week passed, the blur-sneak, maybe motivated by hunger, maybe just getting smarter, showed how it got the second half of its name, Sneak. And it showed it that it could learn. And why not? If Fangspew and his friends can learn and do things smarter, so could a blur-sneak. T-Moss and Fangspew were on the path heading back to the pond when the blur-sneak snuck in front of them. He put himself between them and the water and hid. Fangspew and T-Moss were joking and laughing as they headed toward the pond. T-Moss was doing his best bird calls when Fangspew abruptly stopped. Look, he said, whispering, pointing over that tree, a leaf. Timas grinned. Yeah, leaves all around, Fangspew. Look closely, you'll see that I'm right. Come on, let's go. Fangspew started to speak, stopped, and took another hop. Yeah, I just thought I... And he stopped again. Feel the wind, Timas? Feel it? How come that leaf right there at the base of the branch isn't moving? It's not even fluttering a tiny bit, see? Timas stopped grinning. Hold on, he said. Let me grab a spear. Timas moved quickly to the side of the path and picked up a water spear. He launched it at the suspicious leaf and hit it dead on. Great throw, Fangspew thought. Now, the wind had been coming from the right, the west. When the water spear hit the leaf and burst, the leaf moved the leaf moved to the right, westward, into the wind. Just a bit, but definitely into the wind. And Fangspew's eyes got bigger because he realized, before Timas did, that the Blursneak was between him and safety, between him and the pond. He couldn't race for sanctuary. If the Blursneak stayed where it was, Fangspew would be in very hot water indeed. The leaf had moved upwind just a little bit. Timas looked worried, whispered to Fangspew, Head north, back to my house. Go, hurry. What else could Fangspew do? Where else could he go? With apparently no other options, Fangspew turned to run and then paused, thinking, I could go off the path, go around the Blursneak, move fast. But reality returned before he even started. If he left the path, the Blursneak could easily overtake him and he'd never see it coming. There were leaves all over off the path. There'd be no Timas armed with water spears to help protect him. Decision made, he took off for Timas' house, moving as fast as he could. Timas watched him go, then picked up 2 water spears. He threw the first one, but didn't aim for the leaf this time, because the leaf, after all, was just a little bit of extra camouflage. He aimed to the right of the leaf, on the upwind side, figuring that's where the body of the Blursneak would most likely be. Missed. Hit the tree at the base. Good news was water splashed off the trunk and hit some part of the Blursneak, and that was enough to spur the Blursneak into motion. The animal came out from behind the tree where almost all of it had been hiding in a sudden flurry of leaves. It rapidly gained the path and began to move toward Timas. That, as far as Timas knew, was a first. In the past, the Blursneak would flee from water, and Timas quivered at the thought that this Blursneak might develop a taste for gecko. Ugh. Normally, they only eat frogs, but maybe he's changing his diet because he's hungry. Timas reached down, picked up 2 more water spears, accurately threw them at accurately threw the first at a dust cluster of leaves coming toward him on the path. It hit something between the leaves, and the Blursneak let out a guttural, throat-clearing noise. Desperately unhappy sound, rather high-pitched. Once you heard it, you would know, like a dog yips when you step on its tail. You just know it's in pain. But the Blursneak kept coming, and Timas began to sweat. 10 feet to the north of Timas, Fangspew lands from a particularly long jump, and rather than gathering himself for another, something prompts him to turn. Some noise, some twisting sensation in his gut, some long-buried switch in his brain flips, and he turns back to his friend. The thought flashing in his brain, written in neon, I don't leave my friends behind. I won't do it again. That's not who I am. He turned around and started back to Timas. Now, it's hard to explain how brave that is from a frog's point of view. Remember, Blursneaks go for frogs and frogs alone. Frogs have no defenses against Blursneaks except getting in the water. And right now, the Blursneak is blocking that. But he also has a friend back there who looks to be in danger, so Fangspew begins to hop south toward his friend and the approaching Blursneak. Timas grabbed another water spear. The second one he threw, by the way, missed. Timas is beginning to panic. He rears up on his hind leg, throws the third, hears in front the rustling of the approaching animal, hears behind him the hop, hop, hop of Fangspew and wondered, what is he doing? And watches his third water spear hits one of the cluster of leaves that moves in front of the Blursneak, about 2 feet away now. By now, frantic, Timas knows he has to hit the Blursneak between the leaves on the mostly invisible side to hurt it, because the third water spear did not slow the animal. Thump! Fangspew lands beside him. He turns his back to the Blursneak. Positions his leg beside Timas. The last couple of water spears remembers, frogs can't throw, but they can kick. Timas figures out immediately what Fangspew is doing, grabs the water spear, holds it down by Fangspew's hind leg. Fangspew kicks ferociously, connecting solidly with the water spear, which goes flying, a tight spiral flight like you'd see on a well-filmed football. Of course, it misses, as it's remarkably hard to aim at something behind you, but it zipped by the Blursneak at an impressive rate. The Blursneak paused, and Timas noticed that, thinks, did it pause because of the speed? And then, I have an idea. He takes another water spear and holds it down by Fangspew's back leg and yells, do it again! And this time, Timas aims it. He cups the water spear loosely in his hands, using his hands as a guide to Fangspew's thrusting back leg. Fangspew lets loose another enormous kick, like a hammer driving a nail, and it's getting hard to miss. The Blurschnick is less than 2 feet away, and the water spear drills straight between the two nearest leaves. Not only did it splash water all over the Blurschnick's skin, loud guttural scream, but the force of the spear caused the Blurschnick to stagger back, now 3 feet away. The leaves in front of the animal fluttered like real leaves falling from a tree, uncontrolled and random. Fangsview, unaware of this development, yells, "Come on, come on, come on, another one!" His life's still in the balance, he thinks, and he wants to slay this beast. T-Moss grabs the last water spear, thinks, "Make this one count," and puts it down by Fangsview. He aims quickly a bit higher than before, above the leaves, hoping maybe to get the head. Yells, "Shoot!" Fangsview kicks it solidly, and it's another great shot. The water spear drills slightly above the leaves, and the scream that was no longer guttural. It's full-throated, then fading, and then it was gone. I mean, really gone. We don't know what happened to it. The leaves that hide itself fell to the earth, looking like regular leaves. Then there was a noise moving south and west, like the Blurschnick racing away to put as much distance as possible between itself and those terrible water spears. Fangsview and T-Moss listened as the noise of the Blurschnick's departure faded to nothing. They looked at each other, smiled, and then Fangsview gave T-Moss a hug. T-Moss hugged him back and said, "You know, I think it was coming for me that time. Maybe it wanted to expand its diet." Fangsview: "Thanks, T-Moss, for saving my life. You are my best friend." And they are good friends, aren't they? I guess that's what good friends do. When one is in trouble, the other comes to their aid, regardless of the personal risk. Still smiling at each other, chuckling a bit, Fangsview elbowed T-Moss, and they walked together down the path to the pond and told the story to the frogs. Since that day, 2 Thursdays ago, no more Blurschnicks. The end. Thank you. Sorry for all the vibration.